BJ Smith, Portland, Oregon, Smokehouse Tavern, Smokehouse Provisions, and 2 locations of Kim Jong Smokehouse. It was a really, really young age. My grandmother was a Polish immigrant, and I'm actually adopted, but was heavily involved in my grandmother's life and making pierogies and kishka and gumpki and all that kind of stuff when I was a kid. Summer vacation for me, my parents would ship me off to Gary, Indiana to hang out with my grandmother. So those were kind of my earliest memories in life, was making food. And then my parents owned restaurants in South Bend, Indiana. And it just I fell in love with it as an early age. I always knew exactly what I wanted to do. All my friends in high school were very jealous of the fact that I knew what I wanted to be when I grew up, when everybody was trying to figure out what the hell they wanted to do. In Portland, I kind of worked the gamut of fine dining restaurants, Paley's Place, Olia, VQ. I worked for Sage Hospitality. I ran Papa Haydn for 3 or 4 years, the whole company. And it was just long days, very grueling, and obviously I think the chef world has kind of changed a little bit, but back in the early, mid, and late 90s, we were all working 6 days a week, 12 to 16 hours a day, and then on my one day off, we'd make barbecue. And barbecue was just kind of something that I always loved making on my days off. It was comfort food from my childhood, and not in a traditional sense at all. In Indiana, barbecue to me was my mom putting a pork shoulder in a crock pot with barbecue sauce, and letting it go overnight. Which really was what I thought barbecue meant until I was older and actually started researching and traveling and having a greater understanding for what barbecue is. And it was something that was a hobby that turned into an obsession that's now grown into 4 restaurants. The things I miss most from my childhood food-wise, my parents owned a Coney Island restaurant off Notre Dame campus in South Bend, Indiana, and they had these Coney Island hot dogs that they bought the actual recipe from this older Greek gentleman named Billy, who he didn't sell them the restaurant, he sold them the recipe. He was so married to this Greek style chili that went on top of his chili dogs. And to this day, my mother won't give me the recipe. It's the thing I miss the most about my childhood, and something I grew up eating that I need to figure out how to eat it again someday. Seeing the business grow, I think luckily I had done that for another company, so I guess a really weird way to put it, but reality was I was able to kind of play with other people's money and concepts before I had to pony up and do my own thing. So I wasn't that nervous doing it. I think you have to be extremely confident going into it and believing that it's going to succeed. And everything happened very organically. The first restaurant was open for 3 years until we opened the second, and then the other 2, or the second was open for 2 years before we opened the other 2. So it all kind of made sense in this perfect storm scenario. I left to film Top Chef, and right before I left, I had broke ground on 2 of the restaurants. So I was gone for 2 months, and when I got back, they were built, and we were ready to hit the ground running. I definitely have my moments of kind of pinching myself to feel if it's real or not. But then I have constant daily reminders that it's very real.
So this might be a bit off topic. We lost Tony a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And then David Chang recently talked about a podcast about his depression.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what is that underlying truth about, the mental health of being a chef? That a lot of people, if you're not a chef, you never really understand.
Yeah. I think I also have mental health issues. Well, most of my peers do. And I think especially for our generation of chefs, the ones that worked for the older guys, the bigger guys in New York, we kind of had it ingrained in us that we're never good enough. Nothing's good enough. Our food's not good enough. We're not good enough. And you hear that for every day for 15 years, where you're cooking with them and learning from them, and these are your mentors, the people you look up to, and that once every 6 months where they tell you do a good job. I think I cried the first time when I worked in New York that the chef I was working for told me that I was doing a great job. And I think that luckily we're moving away from that in our kitchens and our lives, and it's important to us to culminate a better work environment and be more positive with our employees. But I think that we're going to see more of it, and we're going to have more issues just because our generation is still here. And it was really how we were raised. It was just our environment, just constantly being told we're not good enough. And I still have that today. You know, if I take one day off, I'll spend 6 hours in my apartment feeling like I'm doing something horrible, and there's this black cloud around me, and I'll just immediately have to go to work. And it's not healthy, and there's got to be a way that we can kind of unfuck our brains to really see the good parts of our life and the good parts of our industry. And what we do is hospitality, and we're here to give other people a really great experience, but we also need to take care of ourselves and give ourselves a great experience. But it's going to take us a little while to get there, I think. My philosophy is even my salaried managers don't work more than 45 hours a week. They take 2 days off a week. They mandatory 2 weeks of vacation. We meet once a week to talk about what's happening in the kitchens, and I truly believe that the restaurant can't run like it needs to and successfully and moving like the machine it needs to without all the pieces of the machine being well oiled. And that doesn't mean working people to the bone or treating them horribly to get some kind of weird Stockholm syndrome out of them to where they're gonna just kill themselves for you because they want to make you proud. It's a business, we work together, and really the employees that have been with me for a long time are more like family, and we like to take care of each other. You know, I think what we do is a little bit different because I was very self-taught, and I thought that going from doing fine dining for 20 years, it'd be a very easy transition to do barbecue. It's set recipes with the meat, smoking times, all this stuff, and it turns out that it's not true. It's actually really, really difficult. And barbecue is some of the most challenging food that I've cooked in my entire career. And I think what makes my barbecue a little different is I've had the last 9 years kind of teaching myself how to make it better and better and better and better. And we solely use wood from the Northwest, meat from the Northwest. And there's a lot of my French, classically trained French technique that's kind of involved in a lot of our cookery. You know, someone told me this a long time ago, because I think it's really hard for some people, especially on the kitchen side of things, is you don't make a lot of money. And it's a struggle, man. And when I was a line cook, I had to work a couple jobs, and I didn't sleep very much. And I really do honestly believe, and I'm proof of it, that if you put your head down and work and just do what you love every day, that everything will follow. And that's the best advice that I could give. You know, as you know, everybody knows, there's a huge shortage of cooks out there right now. And it's because I believe, I don't know for sure, but what I think is people figured out that it's a really hard job, and we've kind of weeded out the people that were on the fence of whether or not they wanted to do it, or I think the things that I look for in people is if they actually enjoy cooking. If they just want a job to come and punch a time card and slang some food just to pay rent every month, it's not really what we're looking for, because we know they're not going to last and they can go anywhere. So really the people that we have with us at all the restaurants, we're very lucky. We retain staff really well, but they're all really passionate about cooking. And I think it's my job to kind of keep that fire going and to really help them in whatever aspirations they have. I keep myself to an actual schedule now, and I think that's what was really hard. I actually had to, transitioning from, I had Smokehouse 21, I went to work at 9 in the morning and I left at 9 at night, and I did take 2 days off, but it, gave me a good foundation and structure in my life. And then when I opened the second place, I was kind of splitting time, and now with all the travel and all this stuff, I was feeling very crazy. I had to go to a therapist and talk about how to I don't know, deal with my new job, because it's really a new job, and I think that's hard for a lot of chefs to become restaurateurs. Is your job is totally different now, and you don't really anticipate that going into it. You're like, oh sure, I'll just do another restaurant. But now there's not a lot of time in the kitchen, and it's a lot of meetings. But I really structure my weeks around, I go to work at this time, and this time I have meetings on this day and this day. And I really have to have forced structure in my work week and work life. And with that, there's forced free time as well. Because if I don't force myself to do it, I won't. Oh my God, what am I currently obsessed with? This is a really good question, because I'm obsessed with a lot of things. I'm currently obsessed with lighting. Lighting in all of the restaurants. I've been doing just crazy research on lighting in my house, in the restaurants. I think that it's an overlooked aspect in a lot of restaurants, and it really changes a diner's environment. I think for myself and a lot of my peers, and a lot of friends, is my personal legacy. I would just like to be respected by my peers. And I find myself, I was just in Aspen for Food and Wine, and I found myself in a company of some really great chefs, and I was humbled being with them, and the fact that I'm even, in the same room as some of these people is an accomplishment for me. And at the end of the day, if they respect me as their peer, I feel like I've made a huge accomplishment. Oh geez, okay, so Smokehouse Tavern's on 14th and Morrison, Southeast Portland. We have Kim Jong Smokehouse and Pine Street Market, Kim Jong Smokehouse on Northwest 21st, and Smokehouse Provisions on East Mill Plain in Vancouver, Washington.